Hey there, grab a cup of coffee and join us in an entertaining and thoughtful conversation about parenting. We're tasting new coffee every episode and diving into a deep conversation about the inevitable speed bumps and seasons we'll encounter as we strive to be the most successful parents and spouses we can be. Welcome to Family Brew Podcast.
Okay, so what are we drinking today?
We are drinking Death Wish Coffee Company, world's strongest coffee, blue and berried, blueberry and vanilla flavored ground coffee.
It smells really good.
It definitely has a blueberry smell to it.
Well, the scent of blueberry is way stronger than the taste of blueberry, but I'm going to try it again. Let's see. I don't know if I taste the blueberry. I'm trying hard to try to taste it.
Strong flavor. It's much stronger in the smell.
That bugs me so much when it smells so great and then you taste it and it's just...
I'm going to try tasting with my eyes closed and see if I'll get blueberry. But I know what I'm supposed to be trying to get now. And it's gonna.
Well, at least I don't get the medicine-y flavor you tend to get from the...
It's good.
fake
I like
berry
it,
stuff.
actually.
There's a little bit of blueberry in there. I get it.
It reminds me we went...
Kind of like you're drinking coffee and eating a blueberry muffin at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We went down to Knott's during their boysenberry festival, and they had all this weird stuff with like boysenberry in it. And some things you can tell right away, and other things you're like, I believe it's in there, but it didn't add
it just
anything.
like added it just to say it was in there.
You know what this reminds me of? Of like a blueberry pancake. You get like that roasted blueberry or like the pan-seared blueberry flavor. That's what I get. So
I would definitely buy this again.
Yeah?
I like it. I'm gonna give this a 4.
It's good.
Oh, I got more on that first. Ooh.
Did the creamer help it?
Yeah, and I only put a tiny bit in there.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I
4.
don't know. I'm getting more blueberry now. I think the
A little
creamer helped a little bit.
What do you guys rank it?
I would say a good 3.5.
Always with the halves. Make us do math.
Sorry.
We're homeschool moms.
3 1/4.
3 and square root of pi. So we got 3.5.
I'm gonna go 3.5 also. Honestly, sorry. Hey, at least it brings it to an
Even
yeah. There you go.
11.
2 halves make a whole. There you go.
You're doing 4?
Yeah, I'm due 4. So we're at 11 out of
15.
yeah. Well, there's only 3 of us today. If you haven't noticed yet. Let's see. Yep, I would buy this.
Yeah, I'm liking it more. I don't know. I'm liking it more. I'm getting more
This is
blueberry
like
as I
you
go.
don't have to eat a blueberry muffin with your coffee. It's in there already.
Okay. What are we talking about today?
Well, I called this episode "Loving Out Loud," and I want to start with a tweet real quick. Let's see. So there is a NBA player named Julius Randle. Used to be a Laker. Now he plays for the Knicks. He's bounced around to a few teams, and during this year in the playoffs, they actually won a game. And right after the game, he went to the sidelines where his wife was and hugged and kissed her, and then went on to the locker room. And some people were not okay with that. So let me just read you a tweet. There's a guy named Kenyon Martin that responded this way. He's an ex-player. He said, we just got done playing a hard-fought game in a playoff series, and the first thing Julius does is go kiss his wife. That's the first thing you do? Where's your mind at? The very first thing he did, dog, when the game was over. I'm sitting here watching the game with my wife, and I'm like, I love you to death, but ain't no way in that incident I'm going to go be with my guys. We just got done winning. I'm not even thinking about you right then.
Don't you just love that last line?
Wow.
So, that's not exactly what we want to talk about, but that's how it started. And Julius's wife responds this way. She says, slow news day, I guess. Both of us grew up in single-parent homes. We never saw our dads respect our mothers. I'm so grateful my kids get to grew up watching their dad be the best father and husband. By the way, that game was after a win. She fired off in a separate tweet. He would never be in the mood to kiss or talk after a loss, LOL, but talk about real issues, not a husband and father loving his family.
Yeah.
I mean, my first thought was my husband is my best friend. Like, we share everything, the highs, the lows. Like, I would absolutely celebrate with my husband with a hug or a kiss or something after something like that, you know. The second minor thought I had was like, wow, he must have been really sweaty. But anyway.
Yeah. Gross.
That's love.
And I guess I was telling Jamie earlier, I guess I could see both sides of this, right? Because I used to play sports and teen sports, and this is a whole nother level where it's a professional that's actually getting paid to be part of a team. And so I could kind of see the other side. I don't have any issue with what he did, but I can see where that player was like, get in the locker room and then come out later and stuff. But my deeper question from all that is, why does it seem to be that the culture is kind of like wanting to attack things like that, where it's like strong family values and stuff? It's not. It's more than just like, apathy about it. It's almost like there's an attack on that part of culture, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. If we would just start going all the way back to you guys watching your own parents' relationship, did you guys get to witness them displaying love and affection toward each other?
No, my parents were not touchy-feely people. Like, even with the kids, like, there was not a lot of, like, hugs and kisses and stuff like that. So, for me, I've definitely done things differently a little bit with my kids. I'm not saying that was wrong. That was just not their love language or whatever. But for me, that was a little bit more of my love language, was more of like touch and stuff like that. So I've made sure to like acknowledge my kids in that way, just because that has meaning for me. So, I don't know. I thought when I heard that story, I thought that was really cool. That was the number one relationship in his life, and he wanted to acknowledge that, and he wanted to celebrate that when he won. That was his first thought. Like, let me go find my best friend and celebrate with her. Like, that was really cool. Team whatever, but, she's the number one person in his life. And so that should be the person he celebrates with. Like, to me, that was like, what was weird about that? That's normal,
Yeah.
It's not, I was just going to say, it's not like she didn't contribute to it in some way as well. She's his partner, so she's
right
at home supporting him and, on the sidelines or whatever it's considered in, what is it, basketball?
Yeah.
Sorry,
and
if
you can totally go look this up. It just happened a couple weeks ago. You can totally go look this up, see pictures of it. He acknowledged his son right afterwards, his little son and stuff. And again, I can see the team part of it, but I feel like it's bigger than that. I feel like there's like kind of an attack on that sort of relationship.
Well, thinking about, I didn't realize there was a kid there. Sorry.
Yeah.
But seeing the son watch that, I would absolutely advocate for your children seeing that your spouse and your children are first, if not God first, but because then they won't ever feel like that other thing is taking the place of them, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can be really good at something, it doesn't mean it should come before your family.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I guess to give you a more rounded question than what you answered earlier, like you said, your parents weren't touchy-feely, I think is the way you worded it. But did you see any other like actions that led you to believe that they like cared a lot about each other? Like, it doesn't have to be a hug or a kiss, but like, did you notice like car doors being open? Did you notice any other kind of thing like that made you feel like they enjoyed being around each other? And if you don't, we will cut this question.
I was like, her eyes are saying it all. Anyway.
Let me try that again.
To be honest, I felt like my parents more tolerated each other's presence than enjoyed each other's presence for most of my childhood. But I mean, that was just my perspective. It was kind of like a, we're married, so let's just do the best we can kind of thing. And they stayed together, and they still have. But yeah, it wasn't like they enjoyed being around each other. I didn't get a lot of that
From your perspective.
from my
Right.
perspective.
That doesn't mean that's how they felt. That's just kind of what you
Right.
saw. And that's what we're going to talk about. Like maybe we need to be more intentional about what our kids see and perceive, even though
Right.
they're only getting part of the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say like I probably have been like a little bit too aware of the like PDA thing with around our kids. And like the other day, a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, I leaned on Mark's shoulder and our daughter was like, "Why are you doing that? Like that's weird," or something. And I was like, "Why would she think that's weird?" But so I think I've been a little too restrictive in that sense because I think that they should more see that as normal, you know, when they're envisioning their future life as being married as a couple or something like that. They shouldn't think that that's weird, that like I lay my head on daddy's shoulder. Like, why is that weird? But
Yeah. Yeah. When they're envisioning growing up, you don't want them thinking, how do I start a family? Well, first I get a roommate and then we.
yeah, we both work together to pay the bills. Like that's not.
So were there any other, and I'll get to Anna's response in a second and I'll give you mine, but were there any other married couples in your view growing up that you noticed maybe were affectionate around each other or you could tell they were interested in each other? And
My aunt and my uncle were cute. Like I would see my aunt like rub my uncle's back or something like that, or give him a hug once in a while or something like that, or cuddle up next to him. And I would always think that's so cute. Like that was weird for me because I didn't see that in my parents at all. And so I would think that that's so adorable that they did that. And then I remember very clearly in my vision, my grandparents walking together, holding hands, and I was walking behind them. And I just thought that was the sweetest thing. Like they've been married over 50 years and they're holding hands, they're walking together. And
you're sure
I
it wasn't
just
like they were
thought-
steadying each other because they were getting old?
No.
Okay. All right. I just
thought
making sure.
That is the cutest thing. And somebody took a picture of it because, you know, somebody else felt the same as me. Like, that is so cool that they're still holding hands this long into their marriage and stuff like that. And so somewhere there's a picture of that. And like, that just means, I don't know why that means so much to me, but like, that's just so cool that they are just that much still together at that age and that many years married and stuff like that, that they're still committed to each other and they still like each other enough to like hold hands and walk down the street together. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what that tells me, and I think we're going to find out something similar when Anna and I answer, is that what that tells me is that kids do notice that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Kids see it. If it's out there and it's there, kids see it. What about you?
I think you should go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
To answer the question about my parents, no, I did not get to see that. I was 4 when they got divorced, so I never remember seeing them even in the same room. But I did have a neighbor, and I would say he's probably like a mentor for me a little bit. Next door neighbor, he's a school teacher and stuff, taught me a lot about construction and doing guy stuff around the house. But every time he was around his wife, they had like this like little flirty, like sarcastic, like joking and comments with each other all the time. Mm-hmm. And even if he was like, it was me and a friend and him were hanging out, like even playing games or something, he would always like have this sarcastic, like verbiage with his wife every few minutes. And it was kind of just like him recognizing and letting her know that he recognized she was in the room and stuff. And at first I perceived it as like, man, he's being mean, but she would joke back and stuff. And I realized it was just kind of something they had going on. And I thought that was kind of cool. You could tell that they liked being around each other. That's probably the one couple I could remember. What about you? Why did you not want to go second?
Because I kind of have a lot to say about it.
Okay, let's do it.
In, I don't know, kind of the opposite effect. So my parents were, well, on their good times because they were very up and down their whole marriage. They were a little too far in their affection for each other. I think sorry, I'm going to try to keep this simple.
It's a family show.
I know. I want to, well, I remember, no, I'm not going to share that. Okay. So my parents were just a little too far in both the way that they showed affection, quote unquote, to each other, because it was not, yeah, they hugged. They definitely hugged and they kissed in a gentle, sweet way too. But there was a lot of kind of like coarse joking with each other physically and otherwise in front of us. They didn't hide what they were doing in the bedroom, like stuff like that. Like they never did it in front of us on purpose or anything like that. Let me be clear. But they weren't secretive. They weren't, but it wasn't in an educational sort of way either. Right. It wasn't like they were having a conversation with us. You know, I was reading, I'll just refer to an article real quick. There was, it said something along the lines of, it's okay for your children to understand that you need private time with your spouse. Like that's okay, but that's as far as it should go. They don't, you can share a kiss, you can share a hug. Of course, all those things are really positive, but you don't need to express details, whether joking or anything like that, about what that private time entails specifically between you and your spouse. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that's where my parents just went too far sometimes. Like I won't go into details, but, so there's that. And, I had other visuals, you know, of my grandparents who had struggles when they were younger, but they came together under Jesus and stuff. And they were definitely more affectionate. They were older too. And I loved watching them hold hands and come around each other's shoulders and things like that. My grandparents on my mom's side were, my great grandparents were still alive most of my childhood, and they still loved each other, even when my great grandma had to take care of my grandfather and things like that. Like they showed some genuine, not only affection, but just carrying each other's burdens. Like, so there was those. So in my grandparents, I saw great examples of that love. Yeah, so my parents, they just didn't have boundaries, I guess would be a good way to put that. Yeah.
And so it sounds like in both of your guys' experience, it would seem from your perspective that whether they were doing too much or not enough was not probably on purpose for the kids to see, right? It probably wasn't intentional. It's just what it was, and you saw it, right? And I want to talk a little bit later about maybe what we can do intentionally, but so what about now? So you guys each have spouses, right? Mm-hmm. How
last time I checked, yeah.
How out loud do you love your spouse in front of the kids now? I say out loud because we call that loving out loud, but like, what do you think your kids see if they were going to be on a podcast in a few years? How would they answer that question?
I've just tried to maintain like a team, like I'm on daddy's team. Like you do something against daddy, I'm going to like come at you because that's not okay with me kind of thing. Like, so I've just tried to maintain that daddy and I are a team and not like two separate entities, like for the most part. But I haven't tried to push the like physical affection as much, just because I don't know. I guess I've been concerned about how they would view that, but I think going forward, I would probably...
And I didn't come up with this topic to force you to do it more either.
I would probably...
Not that smart.
I would probably not, what is it? Like squelch that as much. Like, there's sometimes where I feel like I want to like scratch his back or something like that. And then I won't because I'm like, well, the kids are here. But I would probably not squelch that as much because I don't want them to grow into feeling like when they get married, they're not allowed to like be, like that with their spouse. So, I don't know what it was. I think it was me like tapping into like when my parents would never like, I never saw them like hug each other or anything, like kiss or anything, never. So I think that was part of like feeding into my like, you can't do this in front of the kids because they will like, be damaged somehow. But when I really think about it, if I'm honest with myself, like, I don't want them to think that that's a bad thing to like appreciate their spouse and like love their spouse and stuff like that. I always thought that was really cool with my aunt and my uncle that like they would I would see them hug each other or scratch each other's back or something like that. And I always thought that was so cute, And so I think for my kids, I would want them to appreciate their spouse in that way and, moving forward into the next generation and so on, I would want them to kind of think that that's okay, at least appreciate their spouse at some level, like show that that's a special relationship. Like that shouldn't just be like a roommate relationship. That should be like, something more special that, God ordained, whatnot, that they should be able to express, but not, obviously there's boundaries you don't do in front of your kids, but, yeah. So I think I would reassess my take on that personally, but.
So like hickeys are out. You don't want that.
Yes, those are out.
I would say that we're pretty, I don't know what the right word is to use because you said touchy-feely with your parents. I would say we're pretty physically affectionate with our kids. We hug them all the time and we were tickling them and we would we're not very standoffish with them at all.
No.
From the very beginning, we always were pretty physically affectionate with them.
Always, yes. I loved to hug my kids and kiss my kids and stuff like that. That's different than when I grew up.
Yeah.
So that's already been a change for me. But I think going forward, I would probably reassess my relationship in public with Mark, because there's lots of times where I catch myself and I'm like, no, don't do that because the kids are here. So
yeah. And we probably should do another podcast on, because I think there are probably situations where spouses of both genders feel like they got replaced when the kids come along, right? And we should probably talk about how that feels like, because it's like you're the most important person there is, and now you got to share your spouse with the kids, and that probably creates some tension. I don't think that fits in with what we're talking about today, but I think that happens.
Yeah.
So we should probably bring that up at some point.
Yeah.
Let's see. If I were to go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, what was your question again?
I was asking. So we asked about our parents' relationship, and I was asking about ours. So, I do a bunch of little things. Like I was trying to write some down today. Like anytime we go to a new restaurant or try new food, I always make sure Jamie gets the first bite. And I know the kids see that, to a fault. Like there are times where she's like, "I don't even like that. You're gonna try it. You're gonna try it." She always gets to sit in the front seat, even though the kids are big enough now where they're constantly wanting to sit in the front seat. If there's times where I come home and mommy's got a headache, I'll take the kids out. Let's go get some food so mommy doesn't have to cook. Those kind of things. So I do think there are other ways that they can see that relationship is important if it's not all physical touch.
Is acts of service one of your love languages?
I don't know.
Yes.
It's mine, but I don't think it's hers. So I think
Okay.
yeah. So I
Well, that's
give
just what
that
it sounded
gift.
like
Yes,
that's your love language.
for
give.
sure.
Okay.
And I don't know. Does yours have to be the same? What you give and what you receive? Okay. I don't know what any of mine are. I know that's the one I prefer to give. It's probably not the one she prefers to receive. Actually, I'm pretty good at giving gifts too. No, that came out wrong. I like to give gifts. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but that must be one of the ones I like to give to, because I like buying stuff for people. I'd much rather buy
Have you ever
something
taken
for
the
someone
quiz?
else. No.
Oh, you should.
I've read the book, but I've never really. I would much rather buy a gift for someone else than get one. But anyways,
I don't want either one.
so that's us. What about you? And you have to answer Jim because he's not here.
Well, from what I know, I don't think his parents were very affectionate to each other in front of them. But I don't really want to talk about his family without him here.
Right.
So, but he is a very affectionate person. Like his love language is physical touch, and I mean like snuggles. He pulled our baby in this morning, and gave him a hug cage, so to speak, and he's like, no, and I'm like, every kid's been initiated into the snuggle attack, so you're stuck. But we always joke about it. But I don't think we ever really put much conscious thought into it, but subconsciously we both did want to. I was coming from one end of the spectrum with my family who did hug a lot in a good way. I will say there was lots of hugs and snuggles and I love yous, and that was something my dad was trying to break from his childhood because there was more violence in his childhood. So he wanted to make sure we knew in word and in physical, hugs and stuff that we were loved. So I'm going to say that in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, so I was coming from the end of like a little too much knowledge of the love kind of thing, and then Jim's was a lot more, I think, similar to Jamie's. There was little, very little public affection, and so we just kind of naturally went into it not afraid to like hug each other. We watch what we say. We were struck by something our pastor Tom said. He said that he always made sure when he came home from work that the first person he said hi to was his wife. And he gave her affection first and then the kids. Mm-hmm. And it sounded kind of harsh at one time, but he's like, that's the order of the way you are to love your family.
Right. So I picture him telling the kids, hold on.
That's what he said he did.
Wait. Yeah. I'll get back to you, but mom's first.
Yeah. And Jim puts that into practice when we can, because sometimes it's all the kids, including the dog, reach in before I do anyway. So yeah. So, but he'll give me a kiss. It's never like a passionate, I'm going to dip you back or anything like that. But we'll hug each other, of course, and greet or goodbyes or any of those things. And I'm not a physical touch love language person at all. And I have to be more conscious to actually hug my children more. When I first had my first son, it was actually kind of hard for me to like accept the constant snuggles and essentially be wearing a child. And now I'm more used to it after 3 kids. So, but I'm not just used to it now. I enjoy it now, and I'm trying to embrace it because they're getting older, as we speak. So, affection's always been a thing for us. And now we're just trying to learn those boundaries as well because they're getting older. So.
Jamie has an aunt that's a little touchy-feely at like Christmas parties, and it would have been nice to have been warned, but like she grabs everybody by their butt, right?
Oh my!
Male or female, like it. Yeah, just like a little. Yeah, it's a little interesting.
In the world?
Interesting Christmas party, and so it happened, and I'm like, if I tell Jamie, is she gonna think I initiated something? So I was like, I gotta tell you something about your aunt. She's like, what? She patted your butt? And I'm like, yeah, she patted my butt.
She's the sweetest person in the whole wide world. But yeah, she's very physically affectionate. And it's not, to me, it's not weird.
It's not creepy, but.
It's not weird and creepy. Like, that's just natural for her. Like, she does that to her own son. So it's like, it's not like she's like being weird.
No, but
like,
shoulder tap would have been better.
But yeah, she'll like, she'll hug. And then she'll just, do a little pat, pat, pat on the buttocks.
Like a 6-month-old baby?
She does that to me,
she does
too.
like an athlete. They call it good game. Like you do. And the athlete, you just go like, good game.
She does that to me, too. Like that, and I've always seen her. Yeah. That's the aunt and uncle that I was talking about that, like, physically affectionate to each other. I think that's, like, her obvious love language is just expressing that physical affection.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. Honestly, she's never crossed over the line in a weird way.
And we can totally cut that out. I just thought it was normal
for
yeah.
No, that's for her.
Yeah.
That's normal. Yeah. Okay, so it's just weird for someone who's never experienced that before.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're just patting me on the butt. And my grandma did that too. Once in a while to you, didn't she? Once or twice.
I would have remembered that.
You already blocked it out.
Anyway. But yeah.
Oh, it's my therapist if I've ever talked about that.
But yeah, okay, it sounds weird, but like to be patted on the butt by your aunt, okay, that sounds weird. That sounds really weird. But like my parents were not physically affectionate. And I think that's one of my love languages, but it was like squelched from the time I was young because we didn't do a lot of physical affection in my family. So it wasn't until like I grew older that I like started to appreciate like, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. You know what I mean? And like, I feel this need, like when I'm like, wanting to love on my kids, I need to like reach out and touch their face or like shoulder or like hug them in some way. I need to touch them in some way. Like that's just like a need that I feel, but that was not expressed in my family growing up. So it was always like squelched, like, so it felt like a little like weird, I guess, growing up because that was not my parents' love language. So, but yeah, like later as I grew to an adult, I realized that that's my love language. And that's also my son's because he appreciates that. Like he really, like he needs that. When I can tell that I can connect with him instantly. If I just like touch his cheek or something, it's like instant eye contact and he's like, yeah, I get it. You love me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
So-
he's the kid. We got him like a body pillow to lay next to, and like,
yeah, he needs that.
Yeah.
That's his love language. And he's always, since he was little, like he would sit so close to you that his leg was touching your leg
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Like he always had to be touching somebody.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter's not the same way, but
No,
I
totally
still,
different. Yeah.
you know, I still give her hugs and stuff like that. And she will tell me at nighttime, like when she goes to bed, like, where's my hug? I need my hug. Like, you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
that's good for her too, even though that doesn't seem to be her love language particularly.
I think
She
I grew up like that. I was
gets
like her.
that that's my love language, and that's how I express love to
Yeah.
her.
Our son was
So-
like almost 2. The very like within a minute of meeting him, he like kissed me on the
He
forehead.
kissed
Before he,
so
like the very
that's
first day we met him,
one of my favorite memories. Like he didn't even know we were going to be his parents
He,
or
like,
whatever.
climbed up
He
my lap, kissed me
stood
on the forehead.
on Mark's lap, and then he leaned over and kissed him right on the forehead. It was the
and then the
cutest
foster
thing.
family was like, "Whoa, I don't know where that came from."
Like that was weird.
And
He
it was
just
perfect
knew.
because we had nerves of like, you know, these
Our
are
daughter
our
just
kids,
stared
but
at us with
we
these,
don't
like-
know them, and these are going to be our kids, and we just had all these nerves, and that
eyes.
like totally
Yeah.
broke the
That's
ice.
amazing.
But yeah, our daughter just like stared me down the
She
whole time.
just stood there on the floor and stared,
Yeah.
like not even at us, but like through us.
she-
Like somehow,
my.
She
like,
looked at my
through.
soul that day.
We
but-
were like, okay.
Yeah, and now she's pretty
Yeah.
outgoing and stuff.
I want to point out really quick that that's amazing that your daughter can recognize what your love language is, so she knows she's receiving love, even though it's not technically her
How
love
she
language.
would
She knows
prefer it.
she's
Yeah, I
receiving
can
love from
tell-
you because that's awesome.
I can tell for her, it's not like it's like she has to like take an extra jump to be like, okay, give me a hug because I know that's how you express love. That's not how I would express love, but that's how you express love. So I want to receive that.
Yeah, that's
like it's
amazing.
different than with my son. My
Yeah.
son is like, you know, bring it on, whatever. But
Yeah. And again, if you're listening to all this love language talk and you have no idea what that is, just Google it. There's a book written by Gary Smalley, right? We found out before. And that talks all about it. There's a quiz you could take. And probably you need to know what yours is, what your spouse is, what your kids are. So going back to the original tweet we were talking about, why do you think it's such a rare thing in our culture to see marriage celebrated? I would imagine if you looked up the tweets, a whole bunch of people liked her response. So there is a whole bunch of people out there that would be on her side on it. However, they're probably more silent, more quiet. Why do you think that it seems like what you see, the loudest
Whose
part of
side?
culture,
I mean, the girl,
on the wife's, like,
wife's
the wife's
side of
reaction?
the
I think that a lot of people
thing.
probably would side with her on that. But as far as like what's being the noisiest and what's the loudest part of culture, it seems like marriage is not being celebrated. Why do you think that
Because-
is?
Oh, I was just gonna say because we actually discussed this at the parenting conference, like why is morality going down and all that stuff, and I think it's because in the world's mind, the more you celebrate a monogamous marriage, it's going to just expose the wrong ways of living more, and it's like they think that celebrating monogamous marriage is calling them out, even if you're just literally living it outright.
So it's a
they-
guilt. It brings on some
I
guilt
kind
and
of wonder.
shame. And if you don't champion that, then you can get out of some of the guilty and shameful feelings that you might have.
and also a lot of this culture, I feel like celebrates like yourself, like what is best for me, always focused on me and what is best for me, my mental health, my emotional state, my whatever. But
And if your spouse
a
isn't giving you that,
marriage-
find a new one.
Right.
Right?
A
So
marriage
the culture
is
says.
about focusing on that other person. And that's not what society calls you to do. Society is all about like, focus on yourself. What is best for you? If you're not happy, then get out of your marriage, get out of your life, get out of, do what's best for you. But being in a marriage is about focusing on that other person. Like, how can I make them happy? How can I, and I think a lot of mental health is affected by that as well. When you're so focused on yourself and am I happy? Am I this? Am I that? Whatever.
That sounds like a lonely
Then
road.
you're very prone to like depression and stuff like that because you're so focused on yourself that you just, I don't know, I think if you focus on someone outside of yourself and your goal is, how can I make that other person happy? How can I bring joy to that person this day? How can I, focusing on someone besides yourself, I think actually benefits your mental health a lot, because you're not so focused on, when you spend so much time thinking about how do I feel, blah, 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 you're just inside your own head and you get lost in there. And when you're focused on someone else other than yourself, then you realize you're not the most important person in the whole wide world. You give that to someone else, and then you're focused on their happiness. How can I make their day better? How can I, pray for them? How can I, make them smile today? Whatever. I don't know. I think that's definitely beneficial.
Yeah. Because two things are happening, right? You don't have a whole lot of celebrating the nuclear family, but you have a whole bunch of celebration going on for other types of relationships, right? And both of those things are happening concurrently. And you'll hear words like brave and stuff like that mentioned when there are other type of relationships celebrated. And I think the devil's advocate position would be to say, I think there are people that would say, well, we've always celebrated the nuclear family. Now it's somebody else's turn, right?
But why? Like, why do you always have to set something aside? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me.
Make something look worse,
for sure. Like, it doesn't feel to me like there's a movement of like, your relationship is beautiful. Can we join that party? The movement says, we are going to come through our own party. We're canceling yours. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not going to both be here, right? It's going to be our party.
But you know what's funny is, I just want to throw this out there, is I can totally picture a tweet or an interview answer or whatever the guy said, as if his wife had gone to go give him a kiss and he pushed her aside to leave, he would have been called out for that too. Mm-hmm. So the people watching are never happy. Right. You're always going to do something wrong,
right?
Too. So
yeah. And I don't want to get super political here. Mm-hmm. And I know there are people that would say there was a whole, like, this was all designed and there's a whole movement to destroy the nuclear family for lots of reasons by some, crazy elite group out there. And I won't get there. But I will say that, like, when the welfare system was put into place, it incentivized single parents, right? It incentivized single moms. If you were married, you don't get part of those benefits. But if you're single with kids, then you start to receive benefits. And the more kids you have, the more benefits you have. So even if I can't get to the point, and I don't know if I am there or not, so even if people are listening won't agree that was designed, it certainly had a part in, like, destroying the nuclear family, because it was incentivizing single parent homes.
I know a family right now that's waited to get married, even though they feel like they should, and they already have 2 kids, because they know they're going to lose some of those benefits once they get married. And you're totally right on that.
Yeah. So whether or not it's designed or there's somebody behind it, like, it definitely has been part of the problem as far as tearing down the nuclear family instead of building it up. You almost get no benefits to, being married with kids anymore. And you get some tax breaks, but it's not the same. So,
good intentions gone awry.
Yeah. Okay, so just to close here, what could we do, or do we want to be more intentional about loving out loud in front of our kids? Is that something we should, like,
yes,
think about?
I want my kids to understand that that's where they should express their affection for their spouse and stuff like that. I don't want them to think that's weird.
And if they don't learn that in the house, where are they going to learn that? Who knows? But any of those answers would be not good.
Right.
Most likely.
I looked up an article on this, and there was this one. Oh, I lost the author's name. Shucks. But the title of the article is called "Here's How Much PDA is Okay in Front of Your Kids, According to a Family Therapist." And Bet Alkazian. Anyway, a couple highlighted portions I just wanted to mention as my answer. We'll just call it my answer.
If you said it was Bette Midler, I was going to cancel.
Oh my goodness.
This episode would be deleted. Go ahead.
Healthy communication is certainly a part of teaching your children proper affection, as is mutual respect, but physical affection speaks volumes. And she says, Public displays of affection are very important for kids to witness, knowing... Okay. Whoops. Public displays of affection are very important for kids to witness. Knowing that their parents love each other is the foundation of them feeling safe and secure and in a loving home. When PDA crosses the line from affection into a more sexual nature, though, that is where kids become uncomfortable and it is no longer appropriate. So I wanted to end with my point just being about, balance, just from my personal experience as a child. And so her example, she mentions asking for private time is appropriate. Affection is appropriate, but no foreplay or blatant sexy stuff in front of other kids. Or of the kids, sorry. Keeping it private also models for the kids that a monogamous sexual relationship should be kept between the two parents. So having them know that you're having your private time, but then that's as far as it goes, and that you're keeping it sacred, that to me stuck out. Because that's another part of, I think, the social world right now is they want to pridefully display anything and everything in the worst ways, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a really good point, is teaching your kids that it's there, but it's sacred.
Right. And so, you just think of like TV back in the day where it was like, you would see somebody kiss and they would just fade to darkness. And it was like alluded to
Separate
that
beds.
was something, that there was something intimate going on, but they didn't need to know what and how and all that kind
and
of
that's
stuff.
perfectly fine, right? That got the point across. And then lastly, it says home is the best place for your kids to learn what a loving relationship looks like. Hugs and kisses are a big part of that, even for parents. And remember that even though your kids might pretend to gag when they see you and your spouse kiss, deep down it makes them feel more secure. When mom and dad are happy together, it creates a happier family.
Right.
And
I totally second that from the opposite point of view. Not getting to see that creates unhappy kids, so for sure. Thank you for listening to the Family Brew podcast. Where can they find us at?
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And what should they do when they get there?
Follow us.
What else can they do when they get there, buddy?
They can suggest new coffee flavors and suggest new ideas for episodes and much more.
Sounds good.